Hey, what's going on, guys? Once again, it is I, the chairman, and like the kids say, it has been a minute since the last time I was on, and not for lack of trying. Been wanting to make a video, but there's just been so many films to watch that I just have not had the time to devote to making a video, because every time I think about making a video, I'm already running out of time. I gotta run upstairs, get breakfast done, go to work, that kind of stuff. But figured it's been long enough that I have watched enough stuff that I figured a video was worth it. And I'm definitely not going to discuss every single film that I have watched, because that would take even longer than this video might take. So I'm just going to highlight some of the more significant ones, some of the more notable recent releases that I have watched. So yeah, let's get started. So among a couple of the an older new video that I got was Humorous from the Deep, from 88 Filmed in England. And this is a Roger Corman film, and it already come out like several months ago, and I just got around to finally getting it. And I gotta say that for a Roger Corman film, low budget film, it was pretty good. It was pretty convincing in terms of its special effects, the makeup. I don't know who anyone special did the makeup on this one. Oh, Rob Bottin. What do you? Oh, there you go. Well, obviously, yeah. I totally forgot that Rob Bottin did the makeup effects on this, and it obviously shows, because even though he probably didn't have a lot of money, he made it look about as good as possible. The creature effects were very well done. There was really never any point in which it looked bad or unconvincing, or it jarring to the point where it took you out of the film. So yeah, definitely well worth the pickup. And of course, for it being a Roger Corman film, there's plenty of female nudity in this, so you get your enjoyment from that as well. And I bought Willy Wonka finally, because it got down to a good price on Amazon. And this is just a standard Blu-ray, nothing special. It's got the discs and the code. Yeah, it was a very enjoyable film. I have to admit, I've never watched this film, but I have read the books, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator by Roald Dahl. And I had watched the remake by Tim Burton and starring Johnny Depp, which is definitely not as good as this film, just in terms of its charm and its appeal and the overall look of it, and definitely the performance of Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka is what mostly sold this film. And yeah, it's a legendary, iconic performance by him. So yeah, I can't say much more about Willy Wonka, because it was definitely enjoyable. And so yeah, I had mentioned that I definitely did get True Romance on release from Arrow, and I gotta say that while it's not the best looking 4K transfer, it's very decent. It's the film lacks, I guess, a lot of good examples of where 4K and HDR could have really helped. But yeah, for sure, the outdoor scenes, like the scene where they take Elliot to the amusement park, look really good in 4K. I mean, anytime where there was color, it looked pretty good. I'm not sure if it's like Tony Scott liking to use the smoke effects that made it kind of not as clear as it could be, but yeah, where it really needed it, it looked great in the 4K. And one thing I will say is that the audio is really loud. Like the songs especially were loud. Like when the first scene of them in L.A. and then the Aerosmith song "Take Me to the Other Side" comes on. I mean, it booms. Like I leave my my receiver on the same volume, and it was really loud. It sounded like more like a, I have it on 65, and it sounded more like a 70. So, and also the dialogue on the center channel is really strong. Like during the famous scene between Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper about Sicilians. Like the dialogue comes through the center channel very strongly, almost to the point where it's a little bit overpowering. Like, wow, this is like really loud through the center channel. I guess that's just a case of how they mixed it, but that's just one thing I noticed about the sound. And what's interesting is that because when I first saw True Romance, it was, I'm pretty sure it was the first time I ever heard Sonny Chiba in Street Fighter, but of course, you know, Clarence is just absolutely in love with Sonny Chiba. And at that time, you know, obviously Sonny Chiba had been a cult figure, but clearly was much less well known and regarded as compared to like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. And so at the time, I had bought the Street Fighter collection, the Street Fighter, the Revenge of Street Fighter, and the Return of Street Fighter, and Street Fighter's Last Revenge, on I believe VHS, because this was like in the mid '90s, so there's obviously no DVD around that time, and I'm pretty sure I got on VHS, and then because of you know, having watched True Romance, I said, well, I bought this like a few months ago, and let me go back and watch this. And of course, after I finished watching the Return of Street Fighter, we all found out the terribly sad news that Shinichi Sonny Chiba, born Sadaho Maeda, died of complications from COVID. So rest in peace, Sonny Chiba. And so for anyone who isn't aware, but you really should be, because it is Street Fighter, Sonny Chiba plays Takuma Tsurugi, although in the English translations he's called Terry Suguri. I don't know why, but that's his name, Takuma Tsurugi. And he plays obviously a badass, ultimate badass character, quite possibly one of the baddest motherfuckers who ever lived and walked the planet Earth. And he just goes around and acts as a enforcer and assassin for the mafia. They make sure to call it the mafia. They don't call it the Yakuza. So I'm wondering if this was like a case of where they wanted to make sure that they were good with the Yakuza, who I'm sure at the time, as they do now, control a lot of things in Japan and have a lot of power, that they didn't want to like piss them off. So they made sure that the bad guys were the mafia, and they even bring in Western actors who actually do a pretty good job of speaking Japanese. I'm not sure if they're speaking Japanese or if they're being dubbed, but they're speaking Japanese. It's not like they're not speaking English and then the Japanese being dubbed over them. They're actually speaking Japanese, you can tell. And like they bring in like Italian guys. There's like a Don Costello. You know, it's pretty on the nose that they're basically trying to say that the bad guys are not Yakuza. So yeah, I'm going to get around to watching the third film and doing it while all honoring the legacy of Sonny Chiba. And speaking of Japan, I've been on a bit of a Japanese kick. Obviously, we got Ran from the legendary all-time great director Akira Kurosawa. And Ran is, like I've mentioned before, it is based on Macbeth and the story of a lord, Hidetora Ichimonji, who decides to retire, split up his realm or lands. I mean, he's not a king, so you can't really call it a realm. Among his three sons, Taro, Jiro, and Saburo. And so clearly, this turns out to be a very bad idea because the three sons start warring against each other. Taro is killed by Jiro, and Taro's wife, Lady Kaede, ends up hooking up with Jiro, and she's a complete manipulator, and basically gets them to all fight each other And what was interesting is at the end, because I had watched this film when I was a kid, the one thing I remembered most vividly was when Saburo's lieutenants go and find. No, I'm sorry. Let me back that up. Jiro and Saburo start fighting, and so Jiro starts to lose. Saburo is about to defeat them. So Jiro's lieutenants go back to their castle because Saburo's forces are about to take over the castle. And one of Jiro's lieutenants, who Heiseri Kaede, he just says, "You're a rat. You've been manipulating. Yeah, you've been playing them all against each other." And he just straight up decapitates her, and the blood sprays, like it sprays against the wall. Like they must have put a hose back here and just like sprayed the blood out. And that's the thing. And that's the one image that I remember. And what's interesting is when you watch on 4K, you realize the blood kind of looks like paint. That was one of the things you notice in a lot of these 4K films, is that what looked decent for blood, like say on VHS or something, really doesn't look that good on 4K because the color is always a little bit wrong. You can tell it's like paint-like in its viscosity. It's not blood. It doesn't look like blood. That's one thing you notice, is that it took them a long time to get blood right. The way it flowed, the way it sprayed, the way it looked, the way it photographed in terms of like the light. Because I mean, I'm sure we all know we've all seen blood, and if you don't get it right, it just doesn't look right. So that's one of the things I noticed, was that when she gets decapitated, the blood just doesn't look right. But the other thing is the other things I know, of course, it's not the greatest looking 4K, like I mentioned with True Romance. It's not the greatest looking transfer, but there are moments when it does look amazing, and mainly, when it comes to photochemically films, is that in the bright daylit scenes, it does look great. I mean, there's these shots where Lord Hidetora and his companion, his fool Kiyomi, they're running around the ruins of his castle, and some of those scenes look amazing. Like, just because of the way that, obviously Kurosawa shot it, already came out looking great, but just that, and in combination with how it comes out on 4K, I mean, you see the details of the stones all around, and everything about it looks great, and obviously the colors come out very well. And there are shots where it's darker, or where it's a process shot where clearly it doesn't look as good. So you kind of know what to expect with these like older 80s era films, where you necessarily won't get the most pristine transfer, and it's kind of hard to expect that every film is going to look like Apocalypse Now or The Shining or Blade Runner, especially if they're not major American studio films. So, yep, that's Ran. Definitely recommend that you get this if you're in any way interested in Japanese cinema, world cinema. You're a Kurosawa fan. Oh, I didn't want to mention that the actor who plays Lord Hidetora is Tatsuya Nakadai, and among all of the great performances in this film, I mean, he does probably the greatest, because he acts so much with his eyes. I mean, he's got those bug eyes, like if you can see here. Like, they obviously give him that kind of a kabuki makeup with like the really like they blacken out his face so that you really see his eyes even more, and he's got that beard where like it comes down here, and so you really see his eyes even more, and his eyes are already like huge. Like, if you go look at pictures of him as a younger man, and he's still got the big eyes. And Nakadai was probably number 2 among the most well-known Japanese actors outside of Japan, second only to Toshio Mifune. And he and Mifune have acted together before. They were in Yojimbo and Nakadai was in Kagemusha, but I don't think Mifune was in Kagemusha. But Kagemusha was also obviously directed by Kurosawa. So if you're any kind of Kurosawa fan, you know, go back and find Throne of Blood, Yojimbo, Seven Samurai, Kagemusha, films like that. Actually, watching Ran makes me want to go and get those films also, because I have watched. Pretty sure I've watched. I've definitely watched Seven Samurai. I don't think I've watched Rashomon, but I think I've watched a couple others. So yeah, makes me want to go back and get some of those. Also, then I got in. This is probably the newest. Oh, sorry, this is the newest film of this batch that I have watched, and I watched this with my son. This is a Eureka UK release of Prophecy, and Prophecy is a 1979 horror film directed by John Frankenheimer. And interestingly enough, I think it's the only horror film that John Frankenheimer ever directed. And so this is the inside. You have the disc. It's region B, by the way, so just, you know. And the film starts Robert Foxworth and Talia Shire. And we all know Talia Shire from Rocky and Godfather fame. And the idea of the film is that Foxworth plays a EPA doctor who is assigned to go to Maine to investigate the situation with a local lumber company and Native American tribe who are in dispute over the land that the lumbering is occurring on. And he goes with his wife, who's played by Talia Shire, and they discover that there's been some chemical poisoning of mercury that is causing all sorts of crazy mutations and occurring among the local wildlife and like the people as well. And so what happens is that if the mercury gets into a pregnant female, it can actually mutate the fetus. And so what results is that we get this creature who is a female, and she's been mutated into like a 20-foot or 20 foot tall horrible looking bear who just goes crazy. And then she has two I guess babies who are discovered by the main characters, and the bear goes on a chase after them to get them back. And so this is also similar to Humorous from the Deep, where I don't know what the budget was. I mean, obviously, this is more of a studio film. This was Paramount, but I can't imagine it had a massive budget. And it looked pretty good. There really wasn't any scenes that looked bad. In terms of the picture, yeah, it looked pretty good. Anytime it was like a bright scene, daylit scenes looked pretty good. Even at like the dark, it looked pretty good. So I definitely have no complaints over the picture quality of this film. Maybe like the only times in which it looked bad was where you could tell obviously that the creature was throwing around like a mannequin. Obviously not the real person, but a mannequin. Like when he's throwing it, like you can tell it must have been a mannequin or like a like a dummy or something like that. But it still didn't. I mean, like they didn't linger on those shots, so it didn't like. It was like really quick, so it didn't take you out of it, or it didn't make you you know, lose your sense of verisimilitude with that. And obviously, it being directed by John Frankenheimer, he's going to do a very competent and a professional job in directing it. And so overall, yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, the only thing I would say is that I think the film kind of ended, seemed to end abruptly. But what's interesting is that, like this film, and also like with Humorous from the Deep, they both end on these kind of cliffhangers. Like in Humorous from the Deep, the idea is that the creatures all want to procreate with females, and so so one of the creatures actually does manage to do that with one of the girls, and so in the end of the film, she actually gets pregnant and gives birth to like a hybrid creature human, and it's kind of supposed to suggest that there's going to be a next film, but I don't think there ever was one. And then the same thing with this, where you see one of the creatures' offspring has now grown up, and it kind of suggests that there's going to be a like a sequel where it comes and gets revenge, kind of like Jaws. So it's interesting that like there was this trend of trying to do that, where they would want to tease a possible sequel when there was none. So yeah, it was just something interesting that I noticed. Yeah, sorry about that. I just realized I wanted to mention another film that I watched. This is from my Kino haul, and this is a film called Loophole, starring Albert Finney and Martin Sheen. A film that I'd never heard of. I guess this was like pretty much a UK film, because I don't even know what studio released it. It doesn't even say what studio released it. But in this film, Albert Finney plays a sophisticated bank robber, and Martin Sheen plays a American architect living in the UK. He's married a English woman played by Susanna York, and so he's recently lost his job, and he's looking to get money because he lives a pretty high class lifestyle, and Finney recruits him to join his crew, who are going to rob a securities bank vault. And so the whole story is just about how they get together, they figure out the plot, how to get it done. And the one thing interesting, as always, about heist films is the way they come together, how each team member plays a part, the cutting back and forth, the editing of how the whole heist comes together. And so yeah, this is definitely a very interesting little film. Like I said, I never heard of it. The director is a guy named John Quested. I never heard of him. It definitely didn't lack for a production values at all. But yeah, it was just probably a small little film that they made in England. And if you're ever on Kino and looking to pick stuff up on a sale, I would definitely get this one. So yeah, that was about all I had to for today. Didn't want to have it go on much longer, and there's definitely going to be a lot more stuff coming in soon. I just put an order for Black Widow, and on top of that I added Speed from Disney Movie Club. We got Thing coming, we got A Clockwork Orange coming, so yeah, definitely good stuff coming down the road, and I'll definitely talk to you guys about it. Until then, have a good one. See ya.